Lokati here. Today we're going to talk about a build that a creator, Tsukimi, has come up with, or at least has put together a guide on. I came across this build when I was trying to put together a barrier invocation pyromantic right witch, because I did see a lot of these kind of theory crafting about the build early on in the league, even a couple days before the league started, and no one really had put anything together, and I hadn't played witch, and so I leveled a witch and decided I wanted to put it together. So his build came across, and he does a pretty good job of getting the build set up, but he doesn't explain a few things very well, so I kind of wanted to clarify those and go over a few things. But first, we will kick this off with a T15 map. We are level 84, and we have some mediocre gear, which we will go over here shortly. I would say a total investment on my character is maybe 5 or 6 div right now. You could invest more or less in that. I had much less of it whenever I started, but the basis of the build is this. You're going to be dropping comets on everything and running around. Very straightforward. This is a less recovery of life and energy shield map. So less recovery of life and energy shield map is going to control how often we can drop these comets. With more life recovery, we can drop them more often. With less life recovery, we can drop them less often. And that's basically where the build's limiting factor is. And more specifically, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about. So in his guide, he says, oh, you can't start this build until like level 80 or level 90 or whatever it is, because you won't have all the things put together for it. But you don't have to wait until then. I started playing this at around 62. And so I just started farming maps right out of the campaign with a version of this build. And we're going to kind of talk about how I got to that version. But as you can see, very, very straightforward. Run around, drop comments on everything, and use your Flask in order to recover your energy shield. Now we're going to get out of this map real quick, and I will show you what I'm talking about as far as getting the build set up. So, first off and foremost, the amount of comments you drop is not limited by cast speed or action speed or skill speed. It's limited by how quickly you can recover. So here are the bases of the build. The first thing you do is you need to charge up your barrier invocation. We do that by taking damage. One of the ways that you can take damage is through Pyromantic Pact. So Pyromantic Pact is your mana is replaced with Infernal Flame. The Infernal Flame is used for spending on skills, and when you reach maximum Infernal Flame, you take damage equal to your life and energy shield. And of course, that's reduced by our fire resistance here. So we charge up our barrier invocation to get everything started. Once your barrier invocation is charged up and you're in demon form, the idea is to get it so that one cast will fully restore your barrier invocation for another cast. And so, just like that, we cast, it restores. We cast, it restores. Now we have to recover this energy shield that we're spending with Pyromantic Pact, and that's where our Flask comes into effect. And so the energy shield recovery is achieved through this node up here, which is Eternal Youth, which allows Life Flask to restore your energy shield as opposed to your life. And so we are scaling our flasks to help recover so that we can cast. Now you can see I can cast this without any problems with recovery. And we can speed it up a little bit more, and I can cast about this fast without any problems with recovery. What I can't do is cast this fast, because this fast nukes my recovery. I can't keep up with that. And so there will be points in the game where you have the ability to cast X fast, or you have the ability to cast faster. And that is all based on your recovery. And so if you want to play this build early on, you will obviously have less recovery sources. And as you can see on this tree, I mean, we race around, we get this defensive node here, and we get this diamond, which I paid 1 div for, which gives us max fire res. And then we get Soul Bloom here, which is energy shield recovery rate. So it's the rate at which we recover our energy shield. This includes from Flask. So this is 15% more Flask recovery on our energy shield. And then we go over here and we take Patient Barrier for more energy shield, Ingenuity for more int, We take meta skill energy gain here, meta skill energy gain here, Flask stuff here, Eternal Youth here, Heartstopper here, which I'll talk about in a minute, and so on and so forth. And you'll see the max roll guide below that has the tree build out. Now, if you wanted to play this before you get the full tree put together, you need to slow down how quickly you press the button. But you do need to make sure that you have Flask charge recovery. So the most important thing to get first is not necessarily life recovery from flasks, but flask charges gained. Flask charges gained, chance to not consume flask charges. Down here we have flask supplied, increased flask charges gained. And down here we have recovery, and more specifically, increased flask charges gained. So you're going to want to rush those nodes first. So you can skip over this node here. You can skip over this defensive circle here if you don't need to. You can skip over the int here. And you can skip over like this life recovery, so on and so forth. So as long as you can keep your flasks going, you can cast slowly. And then as you get more recovery, and you can see I'm missing some recovery down here, as I get this recovery and this recovery, I'll be able to cast faster and faster. So it's just how fast you click the button is what is determining how quickly you're spending that. Now, there's a few more things you need to note. You do absolutely have to have Heartstopper, and you do absolutely have to have Grinning Immolation. It says become ignited when you deal a critical hit, but that apparently does not apply to actually hitting the target. I think it just applies to rolling a crit. And so you'll see we'll get ignited just from rolling the crit and being successful in the crit roll. And so as long as we are ignited, our energy shield is never full. If our energy shield is never full, then our flask doesn't fall off. And so now we can scale flask duration in order to get our flask to last longer so that we have a better control over our charge generation, because we can just keep it going the whole time. So Heartstopper just makes us take 50% less damage from this damage over time from Grinning Immolation, which is a very, very high damage over time effect. So this is very good for assisting in your recovery on your character as well. Now, we'll kind of talk about how things work over here. So Demon Form, we're going to utilize this to give plus level to all of our spells, increase our damage, and we deal with the lose 0.5% of life per second per Demon Flame by having on our amulet a 27% of damage taken recouped as life. So this is going to allow us to recoup or regenerate our life based on the damage we're taking from Pyromantic Pact, allowing us to stay in Demon Form scaling our damage, and more importantly, Demon Form is raising the level of the spell so that you can get to your breakpoint of mana cost on the Barrier Invocation. So we'll talk about the first thing that you need to do to make this build work is you have to be at a point in your character's gearing or your meta skill energy gain where when you cast Invocation, it recharges back up fully. Now, in order to do that, there's three things that you need to have. Number one, you have to have a small enough Infernal Flame, which is your mana pool, a small enough mana pool that one cast will fill it up again and hit you. If you do not have a small enough mana pool where one cast will fill it up again and hit you, you cannot perpetuate it. Second thing you need is you need to have enough meta skill energy gain in order to make sure that you fill it up as much as you spent. So like right here, I was at 87, now I'm at 98. I'm going to use it and it's going to trigger twice because it's going to go over and then over again. And so you have to make sure that it refills as much as possible. And so that requires energy gain. Now, the energy gain that you get is a multiplier based on how much damage you're taking. And so not only do you have to have a high meta skill energy gain, but you also have to be hitting yourself for enough damage that it's going to fill it up, even with that meta gain. And so that's a combination of the energy skill meta gain and your total life and energy shield. Now, oh, I forgot his name. Tsukimi has a spreadsheet on how to calculate all this. You don't need the spreadsheet and calculate it. You just sit in your hideout and you go, oh, I'm going to hit my thing here, and then I'm going to go into demon form, and I'm going to see if it works. And if you hit it, and it's not enough to replenish it, then you know you need one of three things. You either need a higher mana cost on the Comet, you need a smaller mana pool, or you need, well, I guess one of four things. Higher mana cost on Comet, smaller mana pool, more life and energy shield, or more meta skill gain. All four of those things work together to control your breakpoints on the skill there. And so you can manipulate all those knobs by just getting those different things. Demon form increases the level of Comet. Also, a higher level Comet costs more mana. And then you can do things like Spell Echo, which is good damage for Comet, and also increases the mana cost multiplier on it. Now, the mana cost can only go so high because your number of casts are going to decrease based on the mana cost versus the energy cost of Barrier Invocation. But this again gets into a very complicated section, but the short and the long of it is you need to have Capacitor on here so that you have a high enough energy for Barrier Invocation to cast this multiple times, so that those multiple times can use all of your mana and trigger the hit on you so you can perpetuate it. Now, this is not an easy build. I'm trying to explain all this in the clearest way that I can because his guide does not clearly explain that, or did not for me. And so there was a lot of trial and error figuring it out. So first thing you do is you make sure that you can perpetuate it. Second thing you do is you can make sure that you can maintain your flasks. Now, maintaining your flasks, we're going to do through a few different methods. Obviously, on our skill tree, we had stuff to get more flask charges. And then we also have access to Alchemist Boon, which gives us more flask charges. Make sure you quality this. Very important. Herbalism is just increased recovery, so that's nice to have on there, but you've got to have the flask charges per second. We can also get flask charges per second on our belt right here, as well as either increased flask charges gained or reduced flask charges used. And so your belt, it's very critical that you have two of these three things, and ideally all three things. You want flask life recovery rate, which is a more multiplicative on your total energy shield regenerated by your flask. And then you want either flask charges gained or reduced flask charges used, or both of those. These belts are super pricey right now, but if you just grab a whole bunch of fine belts from fine people who've been picking up these fine pieces of shit off the floor, then you can slam a whole bunch of essences of the body into them until you get a couple with increased flask life recovery rate, and then just augment, exalt, regal, spam them all to death until you get one of the other two charges on one of the other two flask charge modifiers on there. And then obviously, if you get other good stuff like resistances and so on, then that is also really beneficial to you and your character. So once you have the ability to perpetuate and you have the ability to maintain your flask, then you're just going to looking at the ability for you to cast very quickly by having a very powerful flask. And so you want the highest life recovery flask you can get. Obviously, we want increased life recovered and removes 15% of life recovered from mana when used. And then gains 0.2 charges per second here to help with our sustain for our flask here. And then the rest of it is all mostly going to be on the tree here. You got all your recovery rate here, 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 recovery rate here. And then the final piece of this is this hard to kill, which is a dirt cheap Guilt, Greed, Guilt Anoint that you can put on your amulet here. Now, I know that was a lot of information for y'all, and I'm sure you will all have a lot of questions on this build, but I hope that clarifies some of the things that are in his build guide and helps you to get it put together. If you need any help or you have any questions on how to get this put together, please come by my Twitch channel and ask. You can leave a comment down below and I'll answer them as I can, but it is not as simple of a build to put together as some of these builds are, and so there's a lot of complexity to the answers, which are probably easier on stream. As a caveat to all of this, it is very, very likely that this gets nerfed very quickly by GGG because it is a ward loop-esque. Scalable power is pretty high on almost nothing, so don't spend a lot of currency on this build. If you want to put it together, play it, enjoy it, but it is likely going to need some changes and tweaks as the future patches come out. That is to say that it will probably not be deleted from existence, but the power on it will probably be toned down as time goes by, and we'll have to figure out other ways to keep sustaining everything and keep the build running as is. But I'm happy to update the build as we see changes on that and we get ways to do things better. Thank you very much for watching. Y'all have a wonderful day. Peace. Well, here we go. Alt-Tab.